everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. Today is an interesting day. This is the week that nobody can believe, or at least half of the United States and probably more than half of the world can't believe what happened, that the 47th president of the United States is going to be Donald Trump. I think on election day, many of us were stunned silent. I mean, literally not able to talk. The guest who I have on with me today was one of those people, stunned silent on that day. I think we aren't even sure what to think. In the context of this program that is called Dreamleapers, my intention is to inspire people to leap into their dreams. This feels like a dream killer. Just all of the things that occurred during the election and the import of the decisions that the American people have made and who those people are. And so I wanted to talk to my friend Audrey Edwards, who is our guest today, because when Donald Trump ran for president the first time, she said to all of her people, if he wins, I'm moving to Paris. Now, many of us know a lot of times over the years, whoever your candidate is, people would say, if the other person wins, I'm moving to Canada. That was the place. It's close. A lot of people said, I'm just moving to Canada. Audrey said, I'm moving to Paris, and she did. On the day of inauguration, when there were so many people all over the world, women marching, she landed and was there at the March in Paris. And she wrote a book about it and has talked about her experiences for a long time. And so before the election, I said to her, Audrey, I want to talk to you after the election. Whatever happens, I want to get your perspective. And so she agreed to talk, even though talking right now is hard to do. So I want to tell you who Audrey is and then bring her on. Audrey Edwards is an inspiring journalist, author, and prominent figure in African-American storytelling. Over her many decades-long career in senior editorial roles at renowned publications like Essence, where we met, and Black Enterprise, Audrey has brought critical issues of race, identity, and resilience into the spotlight. Her celebrated works, including The Man from Essence and her memoir, American Runaway, delve deeply into the Black experience, both in the United States and abroad. With her narratives honored by institutions like Harvard Business School, Audrey's contributions to literature and journalism have left an indelible mark on so many of us. And we are thrilled to have her with us today to unpack what feels like the unpackable. So please join me in welcoming Audrey Edwards.
Thank you, Harriette. Thank you.
This is a moment. This is an incredible moment in history. And so I want to ask you, before the election, because we knew one or the other thing is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Were you thinking, okay, I'm packing my bags? Because I know right now you're in Brooklyn, which is one of the places where you live.
Yes.
Were you thinking I'm packing my bags? And then have you packed your bags? What are you going to do?
Okay. I have an apartment in Paris.
Yeah.
I signed in 2020 a 3-year lease. I was not able to occupy the apartment for a year because of COVID.
Right.
But something told me secure the apartment. In June or July of this year, I had an opportunity to renew the lease for another 3 years, which I did.
Okay.
And I would say I've always been hedging my bets. And like many people, I was delighted with Kamala Harris running a very good race. But I kept saying, I'm not calling it. Mm-hmm. I'm just not calling it. Mm-hmm. Everybody I know who I respect, who are smart, who are thinkers, said Kamala Harris has it. I never said that because I'm enough of a realist and enough of a student of American history to know that the odds of this country electing a Black woman were still slim.
Right.
Slim.
Understood. I, like you, was very hopeful that we would have the first woman president, first African American woman, Asian American woman, all of the things that made her unique.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it might happen because historically, in really bad times, women are often called upon to save the world.
Mm-hmm.
And while it hasn't happened in the United States yet, it seemed like there might be a chance. Also, because the contrast was so incredibly stark between the two candidates that, it's like, it's just hard to understand how people would support someone who is so disrespectful often to them. But a couple of things happened that I've heard anecdotally since the election. For one, I have a friend, Black woman, who was doing phone banking on election day, just calling, and calling people to say, did you vote? Will you vote? And she was doing phone banking on behalf of Kamala Harris. And she said she called one person who sounded like an older white man. And when she began with her pitch, the man interrupted her and said, I'm not going to vote for that nigger, and hung up the phone. And it was kind of shocking. Like, this is 2024. You're just going to come right out and say it. He came right out and said it. And I mean, with no reserve.
No shame.
No reserve. So that's one anecdote. The next is that person was in DC. I'm in New York. There was a white man coming up the elevator in my building just yesterday. And I was with my girlfriend, and we were talking about the election. And then when we saw him, we stopped talking because never know what people are doing.
Yeah, right.
You just
right. You don't know who you're talking to. Yeah.
So he says, how are you all doing? Are you still stunned? And we're like, yes. And so then he says, I'm not surprised. Now, this is a white male. So you have no idea, because white men are the large group that voted him in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm not surprised, and I'll tell you why. He said, I'm a medical doctor. And in my practice, he has a practice that's like from the olden days. He goes to people's homes. He does house calls.
Okay.
Remember that? That's what happened when I was growing up. We haven't had that for years. He does house calls in lower income neighborhoods, many of whom are Hispanic. And he said he went in every Hispanic household he went into: Cubans, Cuban Americans, Puerto Ricans, Guatemalans, whatever their heritage was. And he said in all of their homes, there was a lot of Trump signage. And these are not wealthy people. And so I said, well, why? Why do you think they are supporting him? And he said, because he is a strong macho man. And that is a cultural identifier that is very, very powerful.
Right.
Exactly. It doesn't matter that he dissed them.
You know something, Harriette? What has troubled me from the beginning is what I call the irrationality of all of it. My son's best friend is a guy, Nick. Nick looks like a Viking, tall, good-looking, handsome, a Trumpster. Nick has called me mom from the minute he was in high school. He's now in his 40s, like my son. Why does he call me mom? Because his own mother, his own white Italian mother, is strung out on drugs somewhere, did not raise him. He was raised by his father, so he calls me mom. In high school, the only girls that Nick liked were the Black girls. He got married a little later. He got married a couple of years ago. He married an Indian woman, like J.D. Vance's wife.
Okay.
She had 3 children, 2 girls, beautiful girls. Boy is a special needs child. He's in a wheelchair. So on the one hand, Nick is a good stand-up guy. On the other hand, he is totally irreverent. He hated Kamala Harris, admitted that Trump is a sleazebag. He and his wife and daughter came to Paris this summer. We hung out in Luxembourg Gardens. We talked one-on-one. My attitude, you're my child, Nick. I love you unconditionally, up to a point. But so much of people's responses to me seem totally irrational. What I do know is that on the other side, and this is what I had to come to understand, we, meaning one side and the other side, operate in parallel universes. The people who supported Trump felt it would have been a catastrophe had Kamala Harris won, just as we feel the victory of Trump is going to be a catastrophe. So I had to understand that what looked irrational to me had nothing to do with the reality of people operating in parallel universes. And when you have that, it's why people say you can't argue politics, you can't argue religion, because if you are fundamentally rooted in a belief system, that is your reality. If machismo is your reality, Trump is your guy. If you are a woman, white, black, Asian, who believes in the power of the patriarchy, that is your reality. And I think what the pundits and all of the people who were hopeful, thinking that America would do what we call the right thing, in the minds of the people who voted for Trump, they did the right thing. And it's very difficult to have conversations with people who are rooted in a belief system that is diametrically opposed to yours.
Well said. Frightening.
Yes.
You know, so I have a woman who works on my team who lives and works from, we all work remotely from the Philippines, which is a largely Catholic country. And so I asked everybody. So I asked her, how are people feeling about the election there? Because context, I'll tell you one other thing. My sister was in Australia at the time of the election. And she said, while in her company, nobody talks politics per se, everybody was talking about the election. And one of the people at a very high level in the government said, we are all waiting to see what will happen, because whatever happens in the American presidential election affects the entire world.
Exactly.
So from that perspective, I talked to my assistant and I said, well, how are people reacting there? And she said, well, quite frankly, they are thrilled. They are happy. And the reason, she said, it's the hype. She said, people in my country don't know who Kamala Harris is. Like, she knows because we talk about it.
Right.
She's like, Trump is a celebrity. He is a straight up celebrity. Everybody knows who he is. And that's another part of this that
absolutely
we haven't talked about that much again. But what we know today is that celebrities get all kinds of passes. They get the worst behavior, the most egregious behavior, and they get a pass. My art director was telling me, she's in Alabama. She was pointing out how a lot of young people today do not even bat an eye at some of the most salacious behavior that, whether it's a rapper or whoever, anybody. So when he filleted on stage, a lot of people could care less. That didn't matter. That didn't mean anything.
Right.
so there's a generational thing here too that is just unbelievable. Wait, before you respond to that, let me tell folks, because I'm looking at the time. This is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We're trying to keep the dream alive today, y'all, but it is not as easy as sometimes. But we're talking through it all with Audrey Edwards, my friend, celebrated journalist.
Thank you, Harriet. You have been such a supporter of my dreams. Thank you, sweetheart. I love you to death for that. I truly do.
Oh man!
So if I can say one positive thing about Trump, I think he's going to be good for future sales of my book. Gotta, have to get a good takeaway from some of it. But seriously, I talked to my brother today. This is what I think is possibly going to happen on a positive note. Now that Trump has won decisively, he seems to be calmer.
Mm-hmm.
My brother lives in Trumpsville. He said all of his neighbors who supported Trump had nothing to say. There was not gloating. There was not chest beating. There was not CCC, we told you. He said what he felt was relief that it's over, that their guy won. There's not going to be fighting in the streets and talking about somebody cheated and stole it from me. And the other thing we have to remember, there are people, half of them fully, who voted for Trump, who believe from the beginning he got a raw deal. They believe he won. That's the other foundational belief system. So if you believe he won, everything that has happened to him since was being ganged up on. The 34 counts that he was found guilty of in New York. You know why people didn't pay a whole lot of attention to that in the other parts of the world, meaning the United States of America? It was Black people who brought him down in New York. Tish James, Black Attorney General. Alan Bragg, Black District Attorney in the state of New York. We don't talk about this. But white folk respond racially to everything. And even if they don't think it consciously, you see this Black woman standing in front of reporters talking about, I'm going after Trump. Mm-hmm. You see a brother who is a district attorney saying, I'm going after Trump. What do white folk think? You're not going after my boy. Mm-hmm. Not if I have anything to say about it. Even the debate where Kamala Harris was fabulous. There were moments when I said to myself, oh, I know white folk are having a fit. Every time she gave him that Black woman.
Right.
They were having fits. So while we said she was classy and smart and put him in his place, white folk were saying, oh, no, you ain't doing that, sweetheart. Mm-hmm. Not to this white man who is a celebrity.
Right.
I was a fan of The Apprentice.
I was too, but it was a television show.
Try telling that to folk who do nothing else but watch TV.
And who watch Trainwreck TV. All of these reality shows. I mean, honestly, The Apprentice was better than some of these realities. At least it was classy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many things. I looked at a post that Keith Boykin did posting.
You sent me that, and I thought he was brilliant.
He kind of broke down why did this happen? How did it happen? To the point that you made, it is irrational. Mm-hmm. And an interesting thing that I keep hearing, Audrey, from pundits, from people involved in the political world, people outside of the political world, but something that I don't hear usually in politics: take care of yourself. Make sure you eat well. Make sure you exercise. Make sure you get rest. Make sure you hug up on the people that you love. I honestly want to say, that is not the message that I expected to hear. Now, perhaps it began, but it's never didn't. I was about to say it began. It was in Kamala's message. It was, but like Keith Boykin said this before. Rachel Maddow was saying, "Take care of yourself." That is just not what I normally hear her say.
Yeah,
but this sense of the fight is real, and we cannot afford to turn away, and if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be strong enough to withstand the fight. And one of the things that I've heard quite a bit is, because of how inflammatory Trump has been, a lot of people just say, oh, well, that's not real. He's not going to do that. He's not going to do. But we know in the previous administration,
we look at all
did a lot of those things.
That he did do.
He did a lot of those things. So you have your place in Paris. You have lived in Paris. Paris, France. I love Paris. But however, that is not a country that is considered welcoming necessarily to even Black people. I mean, I have been treated well, but I know plenty of people who haven't. Many people talk about France as being racist.
It is.
So what if anything makes it better? What, and even anywhere where we go, I'm leaving, I got to leave this country. Where am I going to go? What makes a place better?
What I like about France, and I am the first to admit it is not perfect. The French were the worst of the enslavers, going back almost 1,000 years. They were the worst. What I like about the French as a country and a culture is that they own their sins. America cannot own its sin. It cannot even countenance that slavery. Now it's getting to the point where we don't want to even act like slavery existed. France is a country, the only country in the world that in 2000, I believe 21 or 2001, declared officially, constitutionally, however you do it, slavery was a crime against humanity. They own it. They have a place of honor for Toussaint L'Ouverture in one of their museums. This is the slave rebellion leader who defeated Napoleon. How many countries honor the person who defeated them? And why do they honor him? Because they respect it was a fight for freedom. They acknowledge the sin of slavery, and they respect the man who broke it in his country of Haiti. Now, Haiti's been paying for that ever since.
Yes.
Paying for that. But France as a country, one of the few that has said we were wrong. They haven't done that in all instances. It's still hard for the Algerians. The Algerians
exactly.
In 1962. They have a hard time with that. So every country, every culture has its flaws, has its things that it cannot atone for. America is unable to account for any transgression, any of it. And that means that is a country, this is a country to me that's unredeemable. And what I say about leaving, and it's so hard for us as the people to deal with this because it gets to how you feel about who you are as a human being. We're in a country that has historically despised us, hated us, done everything possible to keep us from progressing. We've done it anyway. But we're in an abusive country. And what do we tell people who are in an abusive relationship? One word. What's that word?
Leave.
Leave. To me, it's really simple. But I know it's not simple for most of us. It's not simple. And it's not entirely simple for me either. But I do know that I am at a point, I'm old, I'm tired. I am not going to keep butting my head up against a system that was not created for me, for people who look like me. It wasn't. We talk about a democracy being founded however many years ago. Guess what? That democracy was founded for the white men who wrote the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. It was done at a time when we weren't even considered human beings, much less citizens of the great democracy. So we are constantly fighting to be included in a system that was not created for us. And we just have not been able to acknowledge that reality. Just as white folk can't acknowledge certain realities, we can't as Black people. It's too painful.
Mm-hmm.
It's too painful.
Well, and there's the man without a country. I mean, while we have been welcomed to Ghana, we have been welcomed at least at one point to Liberia. We have been welcomed a few places. However, what feels like home other than America? That's a really big challenge for a lot of people to.
And I talk about that in my book. What is home? What is home to you? And home to most of us is a sense of family, sense of community. It's not only where you were born, but where the people who came before you were born. It is your history, a shared history. I look at that history. When people talk about, I am not leaving the country bathed in the blood of my ancestors. Well, I don't have any strong sentiments about a country that left blood of my ancestors on its soil. I just do not have romantic notions about it. Just don't. And I can understand the impulse to fight. We were brought here in chains. We were brought here against our will. And now that we're here, you have to deal with us. We're not going anywhere. And that's true. All of that is true. So it becomes how you feel personally about your situation. I never tell people do what I do. You do what you do. You do what works for you, based on what you've thought about, based on your belief system, and based on how you want to live your life. And I'm at a point in my life, I'm old. I have fought the battles that we are now refighting. I have no interest in refighting those battles again. There are new generations coming behind me that will do that. And all power to them. Love them and I bless them. Right. But that is not how I want to spend my old age.
Thinking about just this notion of runaway, I remembered the other day that Malcolm X said, for sure, every Black man should have a passport. Every Black American man should have a passport. Every person should have one, but especially Black man, because you might have to get out of this country just to save your life.
Yeah.
And
look at the people who did. W.B. Du Bois, Ghana, yes, where he lived until he was 95. Right. Josephine Baker, Paris. Randall Robinson, Grenada.
Right.
There were people.
Yeah, well, let's talk about him for a second. I loved Randall Robinson so much. And for those who don't know, he created Trans-Africa Forum. And this was a powerful organization that basically was talking about reparations in a very specific, in-your-face and elegant way, when reparations was even more of a bad word than it is today.
Right.
And I so appreciated the work that he did. And I remember interviewing him for Essence, right before, not long before he moved.
Okay.
He and his wife. And he was just like, I give up. I don't know what else I can do. Yeah. I've done everything. I've made every coalition. I've done everything. It's so obvious that there should be reparations for our people having built the wealth of all these folk. There should be reparations. Why don't you understand this? And I think he was rescued by his wife, who was like, come on, baby, let's heal.
Yeah.
In her home, right? But he at a certain point said, I don't even know what else I can do, so I just have to leave. Same
with Du Bois.
Yeah.
He spent a lifetime dealing with the color line in America. Brilliant scholar, brilliant. Looked at it every way you could look at it. And in the end, he said, I got to go. This is not where I want to call it an end. This is not the sunset I want to ride into. This is not where I want my son to go down. And I think, for a lot of us, it becomes, and you don't say it overtly, but, where do you want to die? Where do you want your days to end? And I don't know that it's going to be Paris for me, but I know right now, and I have not moved permanently, but I tell people, because people have been calling me about how do I do what you do. You do whatever you do in a way that works for you. And I tell people taking a break matters.
Sure.
When I go and stay 2 or 3 months, that makes a big difference. especially if I can do it 2 or 3 times a year. If I can spend half of my time out of here, then I can be here.
That's a really good point. Hey, folks, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking with Audrey Edwards about the impact of this election and what it means for us as global citizens, what it means for us as people, and how we move forward. Something I learned, and as I mentioned before, I met you when I started my career. We came to Essence.
You were a baby.
I was a baby and many moons ago. And I was not at Essence for 6 months before I was with the Contemporary Living Department in Cote d'Ivoire, in the Ivory Coast. And
I was on that trip.
I know. And I had never traveled out of the United States before. So my international travel began in such a beautiful way because it was through my job, which meant we did tons of research before we went there. We had access, as you will recall, to government officials, to women leaders, to all kinds of people. And so the way that I learned how to enter a country was through this job, and how to be respectful and how to understand what people's beliefs and rituals and ways of living are, and really just how to have a kind of respect that you learn from traveling.
Yes.
Having your eyes open and being with people, right?
Right.
So when you mention being able to go away for half of the year, 2 or 3 times a year, whatever it might be, I think that is essential. Even if, many people at different stages of their lives, they may not be able to go for half a year. Go on vacation.
Right.
And if you go on vacation, don't just be at the resort.
Yeah.
Go and meet the people.
Exactly. And I can do this, Harriette, because I'm retirement age.
Right.
And I was at Essence with you, and it was wonderful to be able to travel on the Essence dime.
Yes.
That made a big difference. So I'm mindful of the reality of other people in terms of what they can do at this, wherever they are in their life.
Yeah.
I'm in my 70s now, and I'm fortunate to have health, and I'm fortunate to have the financial resources that allow me to do what I'm doing. I'm very mindful of that, and I'm very appreciative.
Yeah. And I'm glad you're breaking it down like this, because it's all about choice. Now, it's definitely true that some people are seriously struggling and can't afford to do a lot of things. So I'm not discounting that at all. But for those, even people who are struggling, saving a little bit here and there, making the choice not to get this or that, whatever it might be, so that you could take a trip, at least one trip, so that you can open your eyes and expose yourself to the way that other people live who are not the same as you. And then when you go, making sure you're not that so-called ugly American, but that you are being respectful. Your mouth is shut and your eyes are open.
Yeah. You're trying to learn.
So you can learn and learn how other people live. And how they treat each other. And, I'm hoping, because I am a hopeful person, that there are going to be some good things that come out of, there are always good things that come out of bad situations.
Yeah.
One of my big worries, Audrey, that this already had started. So let's context the pandemic and then the murder of George Floyd. So we're all at home, he's murdered, and then what happens is all these corporations flood DEI programs because they're feeling guilty.
Right.
What has happened? That lasted for about 2 years. Since that time, those DEI dollars are drying up. Now I've talked to so many people, and it even includes my business, that if you were relying on people to have any awareness or care about people other than them, people who represent diversity, you better figure out something else, because it's those doors have slammed shut in many cases. And this white patriarchal wave that is happening right now does not portend well for even people seeing us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we have to look at points in our history, which is why history is so important. We went from the Civil War to Reconstruction, which was kind of analogous to the Civil Rights Movement in our era.
Mm-hmm.
What happened after Reconstruction was Jim Crow and the wave of terrorism, lynchings, stealing of land, the beginning of the Great Migration. You know, so at points in American history when there is a groundswell of an event that tells you where the country is, and if it doesn't look good for you, a Black person, a woman, guess what? It's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good. So we have to be mindful of that. We have to figure out how we deal with that. And again, we have to remember this was not set up for us. It was not set up for us. And we're also dealing with people. See, I think what's really gotten to the core, because what we are as a people is still a moral people. We still have a moral center. When you look at over half the country voting for this person who was guilty of every venal thing you could think of, and he still got in, it tells you that the majority don't care. They don't care. And if you look at the country, you see instances of them not caring. If you have guns proliferating to the point that your own children are being killed at school and you do nothing, that tells you where you are as a culture.
True. Oh, one of the things I hosted a screening of a documentary called Zarowski v. Texas with Donna Karen at her Urban Center. And this film tracks a number of women who had serious health issues when they were pregnant and almost died. But because they were in Texas, which has extremely strict rules around abortion, they were not able to get the care that they needed. And so it's bringing this issue to life through 2 white women and 1 Latina. So, when you see it with white women, it looks a little different than when you see it.
It resonates a different way. Yeah.
And, we talked about the impact of this conservative wave, especially as it relates to women's reproductive rights. So we know on the ballot in 10 states, reproductive rights were on the ballot. 7 of those 10 states, people voted favorably enough for it to pass, for women's reproductive rights to be their own right, not the government's control. And so that was good. But I was talking to someone who had been working the polls, who said, I really think the reason that so many people are against women having control of their reproductive rights is because white people want to make sure that they have their children, because the white population is getting smaller and smaller. And apparently that was in that Project 2025 manifesto. Because this person said to me, well, they don't care about our kids. They don't care about Black kids unless they want them to work for them. Or, it's not a caring about Black kids, it's caring about white kids. And that was a very interesting perspective, I thought, we know that there's been a lot of discussion for many years about the changing demographics of America and how in the next couple of years, it's not going to be primarily white.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that's why this white patriarchal wave has occurred?
Harriette, this is the problem with that kind of thinking is it's very often that's not the case. Whites are not reproducing. Now, whether you have abortion is legal or abortion not legal, if you're not reproducing, that gets down to the simple science of survival of the fittest. And every other group of color, from what I can see, reproduces at a greater rate than whites. So the fear, now maybe abortion becomes the thing that you use to deal with the fear. But one of the things I know about abortion, when it was legal in New York, and it was only legal in New York, the girls who were getting abortions were coming from all over the country, and they were white because they could afford it.
Yeah.
Abortion is one of those issues. If you don't want to be pregnant, this is since the beginning of time. If you don't want to be pregnant, you will find a way not to be pregnant. Mm-hmm. So you can put forth all the laws you want to. And, you know, the white girls that you want to have your babies, if they don't want to be pregnant, they're not going to be pregnant. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the people that you are preventing, these are the people that you consider the drain on the society, the welfare mothers. If you are not allowing them to abort when they feel they cannot afford a pregnancy, if you're forcing them to have children, these are the kids who are going to outnumber you.
Right.
You know, that's the reality. And to me, that's the other irrational.
Irrational, yep. There's so much that is irrational.
It's irrational.
And so
racism is irrational. It is a psychotic disconnect. Anytime you base your whole ideology of who you are on the notion that I am superior because my color is lighter than this, that is crazy. It's crazy. And it will ultimately take you down. It's untenable. You know, you can have a victory now. We have a victory now. When I see Nick, my son's best friend, I'm going to see him at Thanksgiving, and I'm going to say to him, let's see where we are in 4 years, Nick. Let's see where we are. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, the people who voted for him, we'll see what their lives look like. And even if they get it, they may not even get it.
People don't remember when he was president before, it wasn't better.
You know what? And even Nick had to concede when we hung out in Luxembourg Gardens. I said, look, Nick, you have a wife and 3 children. You are voting for a man. One of the travesties of his reign was separating a generation of children from their families forever. Thousands of children were uprooted, taken from their families, never to be seen again. Never to be seen again. There was no record keeping. There was no attempt ever to bring these kids back to their families. Horrible. Yeah. He had to admit that. COVID, 500,000 people died in America because we had a leader who couldn't lead. He could not even say, this is a disaster. First, you deny it. Then it's going to go away like a miracle. Then you're going to take bleach. I mean,
And for the states that he didn't like the way they behaved, he withheld funding, including New York, for a long time. You know, it was really slow to. Yeah. I mean, it's here. I am scratching my head. It's a head scratching moment.
Right. I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, this is what did Maya Angelou say? Believe people when they tell you who they are. We see who they are. So we can talk about, you know, fighting the good fight. And yes, we will fight the good fight. We ain't got no choice.
Right.
We have no choice. I mean, I have a friend who was so, poor thing, before I left for Paris this time, she was just frantic because she didn't think Kamala was going to win. So she took it to, we're going to be put back in slavery. And I said, Sandy, wait a minute. I know they're going to put us back in slavery. They're going to try. I said, Sandy, try putting Oprah Winfrey back in slavery, okay?
Well,
try putting LeBron James back in slavery, okay? Try putting the Obamas back in slavery. So, I mean, we now have a fighting force of folk who are so formidable. I'm so happy that the 2 sisters got into the Senate. Yes. From Delaware and Maryland, you know, Angela Angel Brooks, who I sent money to. You know, I saw her at the convention. I sent her money. So we are still a fierce, fierce fighting force. And we're getting fiercer every day.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. Hey, guys, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking with Audrey Edwards. We are unpacking the what has happened. The happening.
Tuesday.
The happening. It's like
re-election.
and post-election, what in the world is going on? So for young people, I'm curious about your thoughts for how do we inspire our young people to take action and believe that they have some agency, like my daughter, as you know, she's in college in Wisconsin. She votes in Wisconsin because we knew that would be a smarter place to vote.
Right.
Because she's in this other place, she's learning about a very different culture. The Midwest is so very different from New York. And I think like everybody else, they're walking around stunned. Well, those who supported Kamala Harris, because we also know that not all college students who were first-time voters did. We've learned that as well, although the majority of them, I think, voted Democratic. What do we tell our young people, the leaders, the people who are going to be leading our world or not? What do we say to them?
We're always going to have some losses. I mean, we are in a fight, and we have been in a fight from 1619. We have had victories and we have had losses, and we are still here. The fact that we are still here, the fact that we are still moving forward, the fact that you have a platform, the fact that we've had a Black president, we are and I would tell young people this when I was in Essence and had to speak to young people. I would always start with the middle passage and end with the middle passage, and I would simply say, we are the descendants of people who survived that. And when you talk about survival of the fittest, those were the fittest. And we come from those people. And I don't care how, despairing we may look, how drugged out we may be, how many gangs we may have. We are descendants of what I consider the chosen people. People who survived that were chosen. They didn't get over because they were cute and their daddy knew somebody. They are lying in the belly of a ship, lying in their own feces, their own menstrual blood, their own urine, throwing up on each other. 40% of the cargo didn't make it.
That's right.
So the 60% who got off that boat and walked onto shore were superior. Period. No argument.
Right.
We come from those people.
That's a drop the mic moment, Audrey Edwards. Hey guys, Audrey Edwards is the author of American Runaway. This book, there's so much in it that gives perspective on how you think about this moment in history and the context of it. So I thank you for having written it. I'm actually sad that it's still relevant today, but it is.
Well, I still got 1,000 books to sell. So
all right, y'all.
I'm buying, but I had to fire Jeff Bezos. That's another story. So
thank you, my dear. It's always good to talk to you. Thank you for your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all of you for tuning in here to Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. It is, this is a moment. This is a moment in our history, and let's keep our eyes open. Take care of ourselves, love the people that we love, and be willing to stand up for what we believe in. Otherwise, our dreams will not come true, but they must. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.